My name is Nathan Reed, and I'm 54 years old. I was sipping my morning coffee when the company I'd helped build for almost 2 decades quietly erased me from existence. No warnings. No loud announcements. Just a calendar invite labeled quarterly sync and a new face across the glass table. That's how it began. I walked into the sleek conference room at Synertech Systems, expecting a routine update. Instead, I found Bradley Knox, the newly hired Chief Innovation Officer, sitting with a practiced smile and a folder already open in front of him. He didn't know my kids' names. He didn't know how many weekends I'd sacrificed fixing back-end failures. He just knew my salary. "Nathan, this isn't personal," he said, his voice coated in corporate calm. "We're just streamlining to stay competitive. 3 younger engineers can cover your role." I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I didn't remind him that I had coded the very infrastructure they now ran on, code written over 17 years, layered with redundancy and buried logic that I never documented because I was always told, "Next quarter, we'll fund it." I just looked at him. Not out of anger. Just calculation. He thought I was defeated. I let him think so. I collected my things. A few pens, a photo frame, and the original system blueprint I had sketched on graph paper my second week on the job, before the company had a server room or even a plan. Nobody clapped. Nobody cried. A few old colleagues nodded awkwardly as I passed their desks. It felt like leaving a quiet storm that nobody had seen coming. That night, as I sat by the lake behind my house in upstate New York, my wife, Jenna, sat beside me in silence. The water reflected a deep orange sky. My phone buzzed beside me. Eli, the young data analyst I had mentored, texted me just 2 words, "It's happening." I didn't reply. I already knew what was coming. What they didn't know, what Bradley never asked, was that I hadn't just built a system. I had buried its heartbeat deep, made of patterns, timing, and interlocks only I could trace. And I was about to disappear. But not in the way they thought. I didn't expect the first call to come so soon. Barely 5 days had passed since I walked out of Synertech, yet my phone lit up mid-morning with a number I knew too well. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to. The voicemail said enough. "Nathan, it's Bradley. We're having a few hiccups with the client dashboard. Nothing major, but the team's hitting some roadblocks. Could use a bit of your insight, just a quick consult." I muted the message before he finished. The words were polite, but the tone was off, too tight, too rehearsed. I knew that voice. It wasn't asking. It was hoping. By evening, 3 more calls came. One from Andrea in HR, trying her best to sound cheerful while slipping in phrases like generous compensation and temporary support. One from Eli, though his message was different, "They're panicking. The reporting module is throwing errors. No one can trace the issue." The system I built wasn't just functional, it was adaptive. I'd woven it like a story, with logical branches that responded to changes subtly. Over time, that complexity made the company fast and reliable. But it also made it fragile to careless hands. They never asked how it all fit together. They assumed it would just run. On day 7, Bradley showed up. I was in my garage, sorting old hardware, when Jenna opened the front door and called my name. I stepped out and saw him there, suit rumpled, hair out of place, voice slightly trembling. "Nathan, please. The entire backend has stalled. Payment processing is failing. Customer service tickets are disappearing. We're stuck." I looked at him calmly. "Did you check the timing lockouts?" He blinked. "The what?" "Exactly." "I'll think about it," I said, and closed the door. Back inside, Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Was that satisfying?" "No," I said. "Just necessary." The next day, I got an email from a competitor I'd respected for years, Ardentech Solutions. They were growing fast, smart about infrastructure, and had heard about my exit. Nathan, we've followed your work from afar. We're in the early stages of building a new system. We'd love to talk. We met at a coffee house 2 days later. Their CTO, Leah Morgan, was sharp, no ego, all vision. She listened more than she spoke. When I described what Synertech had thrown away, she leaned in. We don't want something flashy, she said. We want something that works. That lasts. I smiled. That's exactly what I build. By the end of the meeting, I had an offer. A title. A team. A promise, total creative control, full support, and no shortcuts. That night, Jenna asked, "Are you going to help Synertech?" I paused. No. They didn't lose a system. They lost the story behind it. And some stories aren't meant to be rewritten by someone else. 3 weeks into my new role at Ardentech, I could already feel the difference. Here, systems weren't just tools, they were investments. We documented every component. Trained every engineer. No decisions were made just to impress a quarterly report. It felt like I was building for the future, not just patching the past. Meanwhile, Synertech was unraveling. Eli kept me updated, quietly, respectfully. The ticketing system had collapsed. Historical client data was no longer accessible. The executive team brought in consultants, but they couldn't make sense of the layered logic. Every patch they applied opened another gap. Clients were walking away. Then came the message I didn't expect. Justin Mallory, the founder's son and former VP, had taken a back seat after the board's modernization strategy rolled in. But now, he reached out. Nathan, I owe you an apology. I see now how badly we misjudged what you built, and who built it. Synertech is being considered for acquisition. The board wants to know if you'd be willing to consult during the transition. I stared at the email. Not because of what it asked, but because of what it didn't. No acknowledgement of how casually they let me go. No mention of what they lost. That same day, Leah called me into her office at Ardentech. "You've seen the news?" she asked. I hadn't. Synertech's biggest client just signed with us. They asked specifically if you would oversee their migration. I nodded slowly. Yes. I will. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wasn't returning to Synertech. But part of me was, through every line of code we'd now replace, every system we'd rewrite the right way. A month later, I walked into the old Synertech building, now renamed Ardentech. The sign outside had already changed. The same lobby I'd once entered with a badge now welcomed me with a contract. As I stood in the server room, my old domain, I saw a young engineer nervously poring over a schematic. She looked up, startled. "Are you the one who built this?" I smiled. "Used to be. But now we're building something better." That afternoon, I led a session with our new team, not just to install new systems, but to teach. I laid out blueprints, explained decisions, and opened the black box I'd once protected out of necessity. This time, nothing would be hidden. No systems are too tangled to understand. No architects work alone in silence. Jenna joined me that evening on the balcony at home. The lake shimmered beneath a silver sky. She placed a cup of tea beside me and asked gently, "Does it feel like justice now?" I shook my head. Not justice. Just balance. She nodded. "So, what remains?" I looked out at the water, thinking about all that had been built, lost, and built again. "What remains," I said, "is the part they couldn't replace."